With summer approaching, many of us are turning to iced tea rather than a cup of hot tea, especially as that midday pick-me-up. While most of us use the hot brew method because that's what we know and that's what we're used to in brewing our tea, there's actually a really simple method that we're going to look at today on this episode of Let's Talk Tea. Hello, tea lovers. Welcome to Rebecca's Tea Cozy, where we share a love of tea and other things that are cozy to nourish our bodies and our souls. In this series of Let's Talk Tea, we're looking at ways to make delicious cups of iced tea. Last week, the episode focused on how to make iced tea the traditional way, which is using the hot brew method, letting it cool, and then chilling in the fridge. On today's episode, we're going to look at a second method that is super easy. And it's actually a cold brew method, which is just what it sounds. You're going to brew the iced tea using cold water in the fridge and allowing it to steep and extract the flavor over time. So the one caveat of this is you do need to prepare ahead because it does need to steep about 12 to 24 hours to get the full flavor. But as you see today, it's super simple to prepare. You can put it in the night ahead and have iced tea ready for the next day. Now, there are several benefits to using the cold brew method. One is it's less messy and time consuming, which you'll see when we actually make the cold brew tea. Two, you're not using the energy of electricity or gas on your stove. And three, it actually has a smoother, better flavor in the end because it's not extracting the same level of tannins at that high heat temperature. So you might not need to add as much sweetener, or you may find that it has a cleaner, softer flavor to the final product. For today's episode, we're going to use an herbal blend which does not contain any tea leaves, which means that it doesn't contain any caffeine. However, you can use really any type of tea. The most recommended for the cold brew method is a lighter tea, such as green, white, yellow, or a lighter oolong. And that's because with the cold brew method, you're not hitting that high temperature, which black teas and pour teas really enjoy for extracting that flavor. So it might not give you a strong enough flavor if you're using a darker tea, such as a black tea that we brewed last episode in our hot brew method. Now, that being said, you could experiment with adding a little bit more tea leaves or an extra tea bag to increase the strength of the tea. But typically this is best suited for those lighter teas, or in this case, herbal tisane, iced. For today, we're going to brew an herbal tea called Pensée, which is French for thought, meditation, reflection. And this is a tea that I picked up in a little French tea shop when I was traveling. And it has apple pieces, lemon, cardamom, and rose petals. So again, it's strictly an herbal tea. Now, the supplies that you'll need is, again, a quality tea. You'll need water, and you'll need a vessel to steep your tea in. If you're using tea bags, you want to use 1 tea bag per cup, just as you would with any method of tea. If you're using loose leaf tea, as I am today, then you would use what is recommended for that particular tea. If it's a basic black tea or a small leaf green tea or white tea or other type of tea that's broken up, then it would be 1 teaspoon per cup. If you're using a larger leaf variety, or I'm using a mixed variety of pieces here, so I may use a little bit more than a teaspoon per cup. So you want to follow the recommendations on the packaging that you have for your particular tea. Just a caveat, if you're using tea bags, you really want to be careful with the type of material that you're using, especially because it's going to be steeping for 12 to 24 hours in the water. And so it's going to be extracting whatever's in that bag and string. So I would recommend that you use tea bags that are made of only natural materials that are not going to be harmful in any way, and that you remove the string and the tags just to make sure that there's nothing there that would be harmful as well, especially the tags because they have print and of course chemicals that have gone into making the paper. So let's go ahead and make our cold brew tea. So again, you'll need the tea, and we are going to use a little bit more than a teaspoon per cup. This vessel is a pint jar, so it is 2 cups worth. So I'm going to use maybe about 3 teaspoons because of the size of the herbs that are in this tea. This has such a nice citrusy but floral smell from the lemon and the rose petals put together. And then you have the apple, which is the sweetness. Really nice. It makes almost like a cool spritzer type drink. Add a little bit of seltzer water and it would be really a nice flavor as well. So I'm using a tablespoon measure, which is equal to 3 teaspoons, which is how much I want. So you measure out your tea, you put it in the jar, you fill it with water, you add your lid, you put it in the fridge, and you come back to it in 12 to 24 hours. Iced tea ready to go. So simple. Now I actually have some teas that I made last evening so that they would be ready for today. So I'm going to grab those and share a little bit more with you. So these are a few teas that I set up and put in the fridge last evening so they'd be ready for today. This is the Pt2, which is the herbal blend that we just made a new jar of. This is a Dragonwell green tea that I steeped. And so you can see the light green color, and that's compared to the really light amber color, almost a pale yellow color of the herbal blend. And then this is actually a green tea that I added some strawberries to, which you can do during the cold steep method, or you can add afterwards and let them add flavor to your tea. So it's up to you, however you want to create your teas, the variety that you want to use. You can mix. You could do a half black, half green, or half white, half green tea, which would be really yummy. You can add fruits, you can add some herbs. Just experiment and have fun. In an upcoming episode, we're going to look a little bit more at some of the items that you might want to use to add some flavor or exoticness to your iced teas. But this just gives you a quick glance at some ideas. So once your tea is ready, the next day within 12 to 24 hours, you are going to want to go ahead and strain it because you don't want it to keep steeping because then it will start to get bitter or maybe pull out a little bit too strong of a flavor. So all you do is open your tea, you strain it into the vessel that either you want to drink or you want to store, and oops, made a little bit of a mess with this one. I'm going to squish it down, just get a little bit more flavor out of this, especially because these are actual apple pieces. I don't know if you can see, but there's actually apple pieces and pieces of lemon in there and the rose petals. So they've definitely absorbed some of the water. So they're taking up a lot of space in my strainer, which was part of the problem. So for this, maybe I'd recommend using a deeper strainer. You can also just pour it out and hold a straining spoon if you don't actually have a tea strainer up to the side. And now you can put the lid on and put it back in the fridge until you're ready to enjoy. Now let's make ourselves an actual glass to drink. So this is the Dragonwell green tea. Look how beautiful it is. It's such a pale, beautiful color, and it looks so refreshing, especially with the little slice of fruit on the top. So, a note about making cold brew teas that use actual tea leaves with caffeine. Because it is steeping for a long time, the caffeine content may be a little higher than what you're used to in a quick hot brew, such as steeping for a minute to 3 minutes. So, that is something that if you're sensitive to caffeine, you may want to be a little careful of and do a little bit of gentle experimenting before you guzzle down a whole pitcher on your own and find yourself awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, just a note to pay attention to that. So, besides the caffeine content, cold brew tea continues to be just as healthy as the other teas because it's extracting all of those properties from either tea leaves that we've discussed or from herbs that you may be using. In fact, it might be that you want to look at some beneficial properties of some herbs that you want in your body and make sure that you add those to your cold brew. Now, one more note about storing your tea. I did not add any sweetener, and you might find that you don't necessarily need to with your cold brew. I would definitely recommend adding the sweetener after the fact, just so that it's not adding to the leaves, and especially if you're using something that's sticky, that it's creating a mess among the leaves or herbs that you're steeping. And one of the thoughts is that if you store iced tea, one, make sure it's in glass or ceramic so that it's not leaching from plastic containers. Make sure that it's a tight fitting lid so that it's not absorbing any odors or flavors from other things in your fridge. And if you have sweetener in it, it's not necessarily going to be safe to store for as long a period of time because there's a higher likelihood that bacteria will grow because there's a sweetener there. So it might be beneficial to actually make your iced tea, and if you would like a little sweetener such as honey, that you add it as you fix yourself a glass of iced tea rather than putting the sweetener in ahead of time and storing it for a longer period of time. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, drop a comment to share what you learned or perhaps your favorite method of brewing iced tea. And I'd also love to know what your favorite iced tea is. What do you like adding to it? What tea do you enjoy making iced tea from? If you haven't subscribed and you're interested in seeing additional episodes, then feel free to subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you right here at Rebecca's Tea Cozy for our standing reservation of Let's Talk Tea. Until then, be blessed with a cup of iced tea.